I always had a passion for children and for social work. I went to Brandeis University and majored in sociology and anthropology, and actually had more courses in political science than I did in those areas because I was really interested in the intersection of helping people and the government and the politics of doing that. And I worked in camps for a couple of years before I went to graduate school, and I worked in a cerebral palsy day camp when I was 16 years old for for 2 years. And my father said to my mother, "Why are you letting her do that?" And my mother said, she likes that. That's what she likes to do. So I like helping
That's
people.
pretty young.
Yeah, I was very
To
young.
be drawn to that kind of
I
work.
don't know. Sometimes I think now that, I had a brother who had a major heart condition, but you would never have known about him. He was a robust, fantastic person. He died at 39 after two open heart surgeries. And I don't know whether that was something that was in me and very sublimated, you know what I mean? Because he was the kind of kid, he went to University of Pennsylvania to Wharton School. He graduated with his class after two major heart operations. And I think that we never realized that, that he was sick. It was just, we never talked about it really, I guess, but I know it was there. So I think that could have been something. I have no idea. I really don't know. I know I just love what I do, and I've always loved being a social worker, and that's how I started, really. Um, After I left Brandeis, I went right to graduate school in social work to Columbia. And I had very significant placements. One, my first year was in a in a kind of a clinical setting, very therapeutic, very very. I found one of my old reports, and I was better than Freud. That's how clinical it was. It was crazy. And the second year, I was in foster care in Brooklyn, and I did this incredible amount of going out to homes and seeing children in foster care who were living in those days. Agencies were segregated by religion, so it was all Jewish kids. So the Jewish children, Catholic, and then the law changed. There was a big lawsuit, and that changed. Now agencies like JCC, Jewish Child Care Association, have mixed every kind of kid. So that's the way it was. And I actually wrote a thesis. It was very interesting. It was on, and it harks back to what's happening now with diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. Because I wrote a thesis at Columbia, you needed to write a thesis in those days, and it was called Sociocultural Effects of Casework Practice with Hasidic Jewish Families in a Foster Care Agency. And it was an amazing look at both whether it's culture or whether it was mental illness that caused 12 mothers to have their children in foster care. They had also, all of them had some experience with the Holocaust, and the other situation was coming to America. And so it was a fabulous, very interesting. In fact, I had a meeting with a state senator, and happened to mention it. I don't know. It came out of the blue. He wanted a copy. Columbia had a copy. I got it, and I sent it to him. And he called me and said that was fascinating. So it was the idea of whether or not the reason they were ended up in a mental hospital was because of the Holocaust or because of the cultural difference. And it's always a combination of two things. Nobody is like, it's not one thing that happens to people. So that's all the big background. And then
Mhm.
I just began with jobs, and I stayed. I got a fellowship from Jewish Heart Care Association and from Columbia, so my school was paid for. It was really great. I just got married that year, and it was like, all these things came together. And I worked at Jewish Heart Care for about almost 4 years, and then I got a great opportunity to go to Hunter College to teach and do groups. And I taught for 6 years in child welfare, and well, it was really, really interesting. And I had very good supervision. I love that job. I work with schools, and I had instances where I went into schools and worked with schools and talked about. It was kind of horrific. A teacher, an older woman, yelled at the kindergarten class, "Go back to Harlem, you." I'm not going to say the N word where you belong. And I ran out of the room, and she ran out of the room crying. And the principal came, and I calmed the whole class, 40 kids, little kids, calmed them down. They were singing a beat. I got them to sing a Beatles song, and everything was calm and relaxed. And of course, they got rid of her. And, it was the beginning of my understanding of the dynamics, of cultural diversity, of understanding, and of oppression of people of color. So I was in that job, and I wrote a book while I was there called Those Children, and with two other people that I work with. And then I had twins, boy and girl twins. And I stayed out of work for 3.5 years. And then I went back, and my first job was Federation of the Handicapped. I did that part time. Cost me more money to work, but I wanted to be back in the workforce. And then I left there and went to something in East Harlem in foster care. And I was there for 5 years, and then I left there, and that was foster care. And I saw things there that I can't even to this day believe, where foster parents were actually putting children in closets on glass for punishment. And I closed 30 foster homes the first month I was there. And then when I left there, I went to Willowbrook, and I was there 5 years from Willowbrook. So this leads me to where I am today, because I had tremendous experience, really tremendous experience in the child welfare field, and in actually running an organization or in organizations, because I actually ran that program at McMahon Services where I was, and then in Willowbrook, I was an assistant to the director in deinstitutionalizing children and families from Willowbrook. So that led me, and then I got a job in the child welfare. It was the Council on Social Work Education. I was there for 2 years, left, and decided I'm going to go back to school and get a doctorate. And I went back to the school to get a doctorate to Fordham, because a lot of professors from Columbia left to start a child welfare program at Fordham, and I wanted to do that. And I was there for about 11 years till the dean told me, if you don't get this done, you're not gonna get your PhD. And I got it done. I actually, at the same time, I was offered this job to start an agency for children that were living in hospitals well beyond medical need, and I knew a lot about that. And I had three women interview me for this job. One was the director of Mount Sinai. The others were professional volunteers from Blythedale Children's Hospital who came on my board. And I got hired to start an agency. And it was the worst year of my life. My children were being bar and bat mitzvahed that year. I was in school full time, and I was in the job full time. And my husband always said, you give a busy person to do things, they get it done quicker than somebody else who doesn't have a lot to do. So that's what happened with my life. And the agency grew from, like a budget of $75,000 to one that's now $31 million, from, 10 clients to begin with to now serving 3,500 children with their families, for over 5,000 families that are crossing our 5,000 people are actually crossing our doors every day at NAC, New Alternatives for Children's NAC. And
And tell us about the people that you serve
so,
and how the focus of that organization
okay, so
evolved.
the goal, when I got hired, it was 1981. I was hired October 81. I started, and in that year, there were children living in hospitals. There were many. There were babies. There were border babies, because there was a terrible, a drug substance abuse uh, uh, problem, and these children were addicted to cocaine, and they were living in hospitals, and there was border babies. And so these border babies, everybody was talking about it, but nobody was looking at children that had severe disabilities in the city of New York, who were actually living in hospitals. And what happened was, I met the director, Bob Stone, at Blythedale Hospital, and I began to go up there and found children living in that hospital for years. 25 kids should have been out of that hospital. They were there not because they were that
Mm.
sick, but because of social hold. The parents they couldn't take care of them. They didn't think they could deal with them. So we went to the city and the state, and we got money to start the agency, about $125,000 to start an agency. which was nothing. I mean, I didn't even have a paperclip, you know what I mean? So it was a crazy thing. We built an office. We got a board. Some of those people from Blytheville joined the board. And then we began this agency taking children out of hospitals. And we took a couple of years later, we started with a preventive service program. And prevention means that children are adjudicated by the court and AC agent Administration for Children's Services. It was called something else then, ACS. It's easy to say, because of emotional neglect or medical neglect, educational neglect, battery, all kinds of things, and get taken out of the home with the hope that they can be reunited with their family. That's the goal, to get kids back with their families, not to go into foster care, not to be in institutions, not to be in hospitals. The first, so we work with those families, and we started with 10 cases, and the next thing you know, last year we had 200 families with about 800 children in our preventive service program. So it really grew. In 1987, I realized they were children that actually could not go home, could not go home, back home to their birth families at that point in time. They were actually growing up in hospitals. And I identified 10 children at New York Foundling Hospital and some other hospital in the city, and some acute care hospitals. And all of this time, before I'd even mention all this, it was very hard to get funding, and nobody believed that these children were there. And a pediatrician and I called all these hospitals and social service, and we found 100 children. We showed it to the city. There were 15 people in a room, and they said, "Okay, we're going to give you $125,000 to start the agency." And that's really how the bigger part of that agency began. And we began to take
Mm.
these kids out. Those 10 children that we took out in about 1988, 89, those kids, I meet with them once a month. They're my alumni group. Three of them are in wheelchairs and have master's degrees. And
Mm.
what I've learned over these years is the discrimination against people with disabilities, the discrimination against kids with disabilities. One example is we have a kid who's graduated with a master's degree sitting in front of Starbucks waiting for the kid inside who could walk to get 2 cups of coffee. And a woman came over to him and said, "How about me giving you $1?" And she said, "I don't need $1." He made a lot of money. I'll tell you what he did at another point in time. But he made a lot of money looking at places where it was just that there was no entry for a person with a wheelchair. And we got 2 lawyers to work with him, and we went to court, and he won all these cases. This kid, and he ended up with $10,000, which was phenomenal for him
Mm.
and for our society, right? So it ended up anyway that she then said, "Okay, I'll go get you a sandwich." And he looked at her and said, "I don't need a sandwich. Just because I'm in a wheelchair doesn't mean you have to buy me a sandwich." And then he came to me and we started talking. So we did a lot of advocating, helping these kids to learn to advocate themselves. In the schools, teachers said, "You don't need to go to college." One of our kids who's going for she's starting for a doctorate now. She's in a wheelchair. She's been in a wheelchair since birth, was in foster care. I sent her home to her parents, and she's phenomenal. And people, the doctor said, the dean of admissions at her school or something said to her, "You don't have to go to a 4-year college, and you can go to 2 years." And she said, "No, Arlene told me I can go to 2 years, and I want at 4 years, and I want to go to Hunter." And I went to that graduation. It was like my own kid graduated, and it was phenomenal. And she then got a master's
Mm.
degree from NYU in art therapy, and she's an art therapist, and she does a lot of different work. So that's where we were then. And over the years, we've developed programs that met the needs of this population. And we built a mobile medical van, which is huge, which allows us to have our families go to a place that's closer to their home. We go into the communities in Brooklyn and the Bronx with our van, and the medically complex kids come to those vans. We also have a licensed medical and mental health clinic we've developed over the years. So the idea is that there's a family in the center with a social worker and a nurse, and then surrounding it is education, homeless prevention, autism services. We have 52 different programs that support our families along the way, and it's what only what we think is what our kids need in this particular population, and what our families need as well. Our mantra is that we want for these kids what we want for our own families. So why shouldn't they have recreation? Why shouldn't Lincoln Center have spaces for kids in wheelchairs, which I dealt with for a long time years ago? Museums, things like that. Schools that have to have
Mhm.
accessibility, accessibility. We dealt with curb cuts. We dealt with transportation with the MTA not having special places for our kids to be able to get on a van. Buses. We did a video. We did a whole play. The Flying Fast Chair, with the idea is that if in their life these kids could fly, it was a musical. It was phenomenal. They could fly across the city because buses passed them up. So there's a lot of that was part of what we did there as well. And we helped our parents learn to advocate for themselves and for their children. So we have a huge, really huge in terms of child welfare education department. We have 11 or 12 staff now in education. We have tutoring, we have coaches, we have a whole group of things for those kids. Everything that helps our kids, we had to graduate from college or go into the workforce. And so that's really what's been going on over these years to make our families whole and to make sure that they get what they need. We're real advocates. We have a huge LGBTQI program right now because in foster care, 1/3 of the population of children in foster care, a study was just done, demonstrate that kids in foster care are identifying as gay, and we're working with families, and to help them to affirm their children rather than throwing them out because you're gay, we're going to throw you out, you can't live here. Instead, helping them to affirm. We have 167 or so children on the autism spectrum. We're doing amazing work in toilet training and helping our kids learn to read. We've got kids who we have an older group of kids with autism. We went on a camping trip with them. They took a camping trip. They it was amazing. We they kind of locked the door at night, but make sure they stayed inside. But it was a fabulous thing that we've done, and we have the Peter Hayes Center for Autism. So we have a lot of different things that address the needs of a specific population of children, and we have tremendous number of children that are in kinship foster care with Kim. That shows that that's the way that the research shows that that's the best way to keep children within their own family to succeed in the foster care system. Not everybody can do that. Some of our kids have been, neglected so or abused so that they can't go home. But we always do look for relatives who could support these children. That no child, we don't have AWOLs. We don't have kids like leaving and not coming back. We don't have juvenile justice things like some other agencies have because we really working.
So you have kids both in foster homes and in birth families, and you try to work out what's best for each child and work with the
Exactly.
family.
Exactly. So we have 98% of our kids that are in our preventive service program don't go into foster care and they don't come back in. But we have step down programs. We have very, very big on aftercare. We have a post adoption program. We have a post prevention program because all the gains you made in these programs that we have that are city funded, like prevention and foster care, it doesn't stop with this population. You just can't say, okay, we give you a year or two of service and you're all done. It doesn't like we have homelessness problems. We have children and families in shelters. We have, the city to get an apartment in New York City is almost impossible for anybody. And for these children, it's really, really, really difficult. So we have a lot of different things that we do to support our families to make them feel like they deserve everything that every child deserves in this country, right? Our children are mostly children of color. They're living in poverty. Some of their own parents have been in the foster care system. And yet we have this aftercare program. 50% of the parents are either in school or working. We had a lot of college graduates, high school graduates this year who went to college or in college now. We go out of we okay. So one of the things that we do is really step up and do things that maybe other places won't do. So, for example, a young girl who needed to go to a college in Utica, which is 5 hours away, and the foster mother had three other children, and she just couldn't manage leaving them. She couldn't find anybody, and so she asked NAC. We had a van. We have about 15 vans, and we had a van go at night, the night before, because she had to be in Utica by 11 o'clock or 12 o'clock in the morning. They went on a van and picked up all her belongings the night before. The social worker met the van driver. They drove out. It was also had to go to Long Island to pick her up from the foster home and drove to Utica. We made reservations for them to stay in a hotel, all three of them. And then the next morning, the girl arrived exactly on time to be at the college, and he helped her and all that. And they had lunch together. They did everything. And I have a picture of her standing like with her shirt on with the school, with a cheering thank you knack. That's the kind of thing that makes you think about like what kids need and what do you do to help them to survive, not only survive but thrive. So I have a great board. I have a 38 member board that's supported me from the entire 40 years that I've been at this agency in every way possible, financially, emotionally, and just been there for me everywhere. I love my board. I'm probably the only executive director that has. I don't have one problem with anybody on my board. They're there because they want to be there and they stay a long time. I don't have people leaving the board. Some of my board members have been there from the very beginning. And some staff the same. I still have staff that have been there 25. My fiscal director's been there almost 30 years with me. So I think, it's it's been a very tough year though, I have to say. It's been difficult this year. I think our staff did not miss a beat. We sent 10,000 bags of food, clothing, supplies. CVS gave us $10,000 worth of supplies, like deodorants, personal things, medicines. I mean, everything you can possibly think of. Diapers. It was amazing. And so we have a food bank, a clothing bank, a toy bank. We give out gifts. We gave out 1,000 bags for school, for kids to be able to have new backpacks, all backpacks, all filled with the right stuff. We had volunteers come in, pack the bags, different companies. Um, Actually, I think Facebook did some work with us as well. Some other big companies have donated merchandise to fill those bags. We're now gearing up for the holidays, and we're hoping, we every kid gets at least a gift of their choice, and we've gotten some amazing gifts for these kids. I can't explain. Big companies have donated. They have a tree, and they put down new alternatives for children, and they give us those things, and they send everything, and we wrap up everything. So we do everything to give our families, what they need and what they haven't gotten. Socks, clothing, coats. Winter coats. I've had kids come in the middle of the winter in snow with a sweater. So, especially in our families in preventive services, they don't have the money, and so we do that. And we gave special meals. We have kids that needed special meals during this time. We bought the special meals for these children out of donations that we've gotten. We do a lot of fundraising. I have to raise a lot of money to do what we do at NAC outside of what the government gives us because the government doesn't really pay for what the agency needs, what we have. And so it's been my staff work day and night, actually. Everybody. I got emails coming from staff at 11 o'clock at night because sometimes they have kids at home who couldn't go to school. And so they were talking on the phone to the workers or going in the field and then coming home at night writing notes to people. So, it's just
So that's why you work all these hours because your
we
staff
all,
does.
yeah, well, it's a lot, especially not being in the office full time. I've been several times and I've been going. I'm trying to go more now. We're trying to get our clinic is open. We have kids coming for medical appointments. We also have kids coming for psychiatric evaluations and therapy. We have something really exciting. It's called Building Blocks, and it's a program where they use dyads, a mother and a child. It could be a mother and a foster child. It could be a birth mother with a foster child, and we've had a bunch of kids go home from foster care because of this program. It's like it's kind of putting yourself, the parent, how the child thinks, right, and thinking not only about yourself but what he's thinking, what she's thinking. And we have therapists who come and train our staff. It's phenomenal. It's a phenomenal program. We have a lot of foundations that are supporting it, and we love it. It's for kids 0 to 5, and it's hard to think that like a little baby can benefit, but it's the way that parents like that we have who themselves have not been parented and don't know how to do it, don't know how to sit and pick up a book and read the book. My daughter had her first baby. My husband, he walked in. She was 6 days old, and he walked in. My daughter's sitting on the sofa with the book with the baby. He said, Julia's not going to understand that. And my daughter said, she will. She's hearing my voice. I mean, it was the funniest thing that I said to my husband, after all these years, you should have learned that this is what you do. I mean, and so like I had a mother come in. This is really interesting. I had a mother sitting in our lobby, and that's why being in the office is really important. And the baby was screaming, and my office was close to it, and I ran out because I hear baby crying. I gotta go, and I went out and I said to this mother, "What's going on?" She said, "Oh, he's crazy. He's 18 months, and he's like crying, and they can't get him to stop." I said, "What about reading a book?" "Oh, he's not going to understand a book." What? So I went. We have a library for all the kids. They can just take the books home. We have a huge room with millions of books. I brought a baby book. I said, "Turn him around this way." And she did. And I said, "Hold the book." Well, this kid stopped crying immediately and was looking at the book, loved the book. And I said, "Read the book to him." "I can't." I said, "Yes, you can. Read the book." She read the book and she said, "Do you have any more of these? I'm going to take them home." I gave her a bag full of books. So that's what can happen when you see things that when you actually see it. So the social workers go to the homes, and even now we bought 500 computers. We got some grants, and we pulled together money to get computers because, to be very honest, the computers from the city of New York, they tried to fix them. Some of them didn't work. They weren't good enough. They couldn't do research on them. So we bought our own kind of little books for the kids, Chromebooks, and they worked and they could go to school. And if you have 5 kids and you if you're doing telehealth, like a parent is seeing a therapist, and then you have 5 kids. How do you do that if you have one computer? So we had to give a lot of computers out, and we raised money from foundations, almost $1 million in COVID money. And that was we have tremendous number of rental arrears, which was a problem. So rent arrears, computers, we spent $50,000 sending kids to camp. Some camps are open for special kids with special needs, and we sent a lot of kids to camp. So we tried everything we can to get our families to get what they need. We did tutoring over the summer. We did all kinds of groups. So it's been, it's as I'm talking to you, I'm getting myself, how the hell do we all do this? But that's really what it's about, is having the passion and hiring people who have the same passion as you to do this kind of work and to really be there for our families and to listen to what the issues are, because the issues are enormous. You can't imagine how some of the people are living in NYCHA houses, and I don't care whether this goes anywhere, because NYCHA needs to step up and do something about rodents and mice and roaches and no hot water, no heat, and broken windows and broken everything. You have to fix it. You can't have people living like that. It's like in a third world country. It's terrible. So we try to move people into decent housing, and that costs a lot of money too. So we do have some money for housing, and that was part of the money that we got to give to families during this COVID crisis. Despite all that, despite devastation in homes and kids getting sick and parents getting sick, we see only hope and possibilities, and for our kids and families. And we had a lot of good things, like kids graduating high school, kids moving to the next grade, things like that. So we always have to I always look with for my whole life, looking at a glass half full,
Mhm.
not half empty. And that's how you have to do this to think, to do this job.
My last question was going to be, do you have any advice for young people going into this realm? But I think you might have just given it. But do you have anything else to add?
You know, I want people that come to my agency to love what they do and feel like they're making a difference in the world. That's what you have. That's what you have to do. I think, one of my granddaughters, she's 17, and she tutored a girl last year, virtually, and she loves that kid. She's doing it again this year, and the kid loves her. They've made a connection, and I know that that's going to sit with her for a long time, because it's very important to her that this girl is kind of relating to her. So passion is important, and you have to. And when I look at people, when I do an interview and hire somebody, and I don't do much of it anymore because I have staff doing that now, you want to look for the person that it becomes like a meaning for them in their lives. And that's really what you want people. You have to be committed, and you have to also kind of like suck it up because it's not easy. It's not easy making home visits during a pandemic. It's not easy dealing, and also you there's things like it's called vicarious trauma. Sometimes you go into a home and you see such devastation and such problems, and you think to yourself, "Oh my God, how am I going to solve that?" And so we have programs that we have people at NAC who are trained to help our staff understand that you have a life too, and you do the best and you take one step at a time and things like that. um, and there's a lot of ways that there are programs for social work and education which are good, social work and business which are good there. But we have a lot of psychologists. We have about probably maybe 10 or 15. We have a special program, PhD psychologists, and it's wonderful. Psychologists and social workers, we all work together. That's the other thing that about NAC, we're a team, so nobody works in isolation, and that is another way that eases the pressure on everybody. So you have a social worker, we have a nurse, educator, therapist, psychiatrist, psychologist, medical doctor. So I think that's what you look for. You want to look for a place that doesn't put the whole burden on you. You want to have a team because these cases are really tough, and our families need so much. So it comes from each place. My advice is go for it. Try it. Social work is great. I love my profession, and I think most of my staff feel that way. I wish we had more money for social workers. Nurses make a lot more money because they've advocated. We're trying really hard now to bring up the social work salaries. People are going into social work, and they're going into places where they can get hired at a much higher salary than child welfare. So I'm on a tear right now to get higher salaries for social workers in child welfare.